Hello everyone, I'm Protick Bhowmick from Virginia Tech, and this is a joint work with the collaborators listed here. And I'm very excited to present our work on TTL violation of DNS resolvers in the wild. So TTL is an integral part of the DNS architecture. It can play both an important role on DNS security and performance. For example, CDNs usually employ very low TTLs for the domains under their control. That's mainly aimed at faster responsiveness of those domains. So it's imperative that resolvers out there actually honor TTLs. Otherwise, this responsiveness might get hurt. So in this study, we want to measure if the resolvers out there actually respect TTLs or not, and where's the prevalence of violation. There has been a lot of successful studies that are focusing on this question, whether resolvers violate TTL or not. But those studies mainly used open resolvers that they could directly probe, or had passive datasets like campus traffic, or they had advantageous positions like routers deployed in residential networks, etc., and etc. So it's still challenging to understand how TTL violations actually occur in the wild, especially at scale, without this kind of privileged access to devices or users that are situated in the affected network itself. So we kind of take a different approach. We employ a residential proxy for this purpose. So with a residential proxy, actually allows you to choose a specific vantage point, and you can send that traffic through that residential IP addresses in that specific vantage point. So what we use is the residential proxy we use is called Bright Data. This Bright Data is a HTTP proxy that allows you to send HTTP traffic through residential nodes that we would call exit nodes throughout this presentation. And it has a very high coverage. It has more than 72 million IPs distributed around the globe across 195 countries. Now, let's go through how it actually works. So let's run through one single request that is sent through Bright Data Network. First, from the measurement client, we send a HTTP request that's proxied through the super proxy. First, the super proxy makes some sanity checks, and if the sanity check passes, it forwards the request to the exit node itself. And the exit node, in turn, makes the DNS resolution, and the DNS resolver makes fetches the record from our authorized server, and the exit node then fetches the HTTP content from the web server. And then HTTP content is relayed through us, through the super proxy, through our measurement client. And that's how we send a request through the Bright Data super proxy. Now, in this diagram, the blue boxes outlined are actually controlled by super proxy, the super proxy itself, its resolver, and the exit nodes. Whereas the boxes outlined by green are actually controlled by us, that are the measurement client, the web server, and the DNS authorized server. Now, as we can see, we can only send HTTP traffic through the Bright Data, but we want to measure DNS resolvers out there and their TTL violation. So how do you do that? So our initial plan is that as we have the DNS authorized server on our control and also the web server, we would populate our DNS authorized server with a record that points to IP1. And we'd also have two different web servers that are designated by two different IPs. So when we send a single request through the super proxy, at first the exit node would connect to IP1. But then if you wait out the TTL period, and then smartly we retract that record from our DNS authorized server and place a new record that points to IP2, our expectation is that after the TTL expiry, the exit node should connect to IP2. But if you see that the exit node is still connecting to IP1, that means it's using a stale response. And that DNS resolver, which is used by the exit node, is a candidate of a DNS extending resolver. But the things in reality can be more convoluted because the client can send actually multiple requests to multiple DNS resolvers, and these resolvers can in turn send the request to multiple egress resolvers. So in our DNS authorized servers, we can see multiple requests coming from distinct resolvers, but we need to identify which resolver was actually being used by the client itself. So now we make some changes in our initial plan. So what we do is that we accommodate the idea of an exit node using multiple resolvers. So we make some changes in our DNS authorized server as well as the web server. First of all, in our web server, we now use multiple interfaces, and each interface has a distinct IP associated with it. And in our DNS authorized server, we keep a mapping database. So what this mapping database does is that it keeps track which resolver queried us and which record we return from our DNS authorized server. The whole goal is we now want to return different A records for different resolvers. So in this case, if three resolvers are querying our authorized server for the same QNAME, there are R1 and R2 and R3 resolvers, we are actually sending different A records for them. For R1, we are sending IP1, for R2, IP2, and R3, IP3. So how it helps is that After, when the exit node actually makes a connection to our web server, we can identify which interface this exit node is connecting to. For example, in this case, it's connecting to IP1. That means it was using the resolver R1 because we returned IP1 to only resolver R1. That's how we identify which resolver the exit node actually uses. And now, as our previous initial experiment plan, we wait out the TTL period and we send the same query again through that exit node. Now, if the exit node again connects to IP1, which ideally it shouldn't, that means that resolver R1 is a candidate of TTL extending resolver, that it might cache the A record, which was pointing to IP1, further than the TTL expiration. But just because it happened for one single sample doesn't mean that R1 might be a TTL extending resolver, because there can be a lot of side cases. For example, the exit node might have itself a stub resolver who is causing this. So we only label a resolver as a TTL extending resolver when at least 5 exit nodes showed the same behavior through that resolver. So now let's go to the measurement data and our measurement results. So in this period of our measurement, we sent more than 2 million HTTP queries that covered exit nodes that encompass more than 9,000 ASs in 220 different countries. Now, we carried out this experiment under different TTL settings, under 5 different TTL settings actually. There are 1 minute, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and 60 minutes respectively. So we do this to understand whether TTL violations vary across different TTL setups. And now let's go to the measurement results and our findings. So first of all, for each resolver that we monitored in our measurement, we grouped them by the percentage of exit nodes that fetched stale responses through them. So ideally, for a TTL honoring resolver, the percentage should be 0%. That means all the exit nodes that's using a TTL honoring resolver shouldn't fetch a stale response. Whereas for the TTL extending resolver, that percentage should be 100%. So now we draw CDF denoting those percentages for different TTL settings. So in the CDF, the right vertical bars where the percentage is 100%, they're actually comprising of the TTL extending resolvers, whereas the left vertical bars where the percentage is 0, they're comprising of the TTL honoring resolvers. So the quick takeaway from this CDF is that, first of all, the TTL extending and TTL honoring resolvers are clearly separated in the CDF. Secondly, as we decrease the TTL from 60 minutes to 30 minutes to 15 minutes to 5 minutes to 1 minute, the prevalence of TTL extension actually increases. Now we actually focus on the different kind of TTL violation, that is TTL violation in DNSSEC. So we know that DNSSEC signatures carries both an inception time and expiration date. And the RFC of DNSSEC clearly states that resolvers must evict responses when the RFCs are expired, even if the TTLs are not expired yet. So we want to actually find out how many resolvers out there actually honor this standard. So we made our own experiment for finding this. And in this experiment, we set our TTL to be 60 minutes for their record, but we cleverly set the signature expiry of the RFCs to be 30 minutes. So what we do is that, as we see in this timeline, initially we send our first request and we set the TTL to be 60 minutes and the RFC to be 30 minutes. And we send the second request in a time when the RFC is already expired, but the TTL has not. And the expectation according to the RFC is that the resolver should fetch again a new record from our authoritative server if it's conforming to the standard set by the RFC. And if we see the previous record still returned again, that means it's not conforming to the standard. So in this experiment, we monitored more than 12,000 DNS resolvers that were used by more than 91,000 exit nodes. But like our previous experiment, we only considered resolvers where at least 5 resolvers were 5 exit nodes were monitored, just to have more confidence on our results and also have more stronger inference. Then we know that not all resolvers out there support DNSSEC, so we only considered resolvers that has the DO bit enabled. And finally, as previous studies have found out, not all DNS resolvers that enable the DO bit actually validates the RR6. So to find out which resolvers actually validates the RR6, we had a separate experiment actually, where we sequentially populated our DNS authoritative server with cryptographically correctly signed responses and cryptographically incorrectly signed responses, just to filter out which resolvers actually validate those RR6 correctly. And after that filtration, that leaves us around 6,000 exit nodes that used more than 600 DNSSEC validating resolvers. So now let's go into our findings. So again, in this CDF, we have found out for each resolver the portion of exit nodes that fetched an expired A record, which in ideal case shouldn't happen. But as we see from the right vertical bar, 44% of almost more than 44% of the resolvers still serve the expired RR-SIG response from their cache, which is a direct violation of the DNSSEC standard. We see that 36.3% of them fetched a new response, which conform to the DNSSEC standard. But as you see from the CDF, most of the resolvers actually do not conform to the DNSSEC standard. Now, let's go through our limitations and discussions of our study. First of all, one major limitation of a study is that we can't really probe into the multi-layered caching architecture of DNS, because we can only monitor the egress IPs that queries our authoritative server. But there could be multiple other DNS resolvers that lies behind those egress IPs. There could be multiple layers, the ingress IPs that actually take the queries from the clients itself. We really can't probe into the caching architecture of those DNS resolvers. That's a major limitation of our work. And we also have made the datasets and source codes public in the given website. And we believe that the findings of our work would be helpful for future research in the same field. Thank you all.